My parents always said a house wasn't just walls, it was family legacy. Funny how those words magically stopped applying the moment they handed my legacy to my brother like it was some clearance rack giveaway. They expected me to cry, beg, maybe even clap for the betrayal. Instead, I walked out the door with a smile and sold the one thing they never imagined losing. And when they found out what it was, the entire family froze, because that deal changed everything. If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type "interested in" the comments, and I will give you a heart. I always thought the worst thing a parent could do was forget your birthday, or accidentally call you by the dog's name, or maybe favor your sibling a little too loudly at Christmas. Turns out none of that even warms up the engine of what mine were capable of, because the day I found out my parents gave my house, my first real accomplishment, my proof that I could stand on my own 2 feet, to my brother like it was a party favor, something in me cracked so cleanly, it almost felt peaceful. Do you ever feel a betrayal so sharp it makes you oddly calm? Like your soul just steps out, takes a long drag of a metaphorical cigarette, and says, "Oh, so this is who we are now." That was me, standing in a kitchen I spent 2 years renovating, holding a cup of coffee I brewed, in a house I paid for, listening to Mom explain how it makes more sense for the property to go to my brother because he has a family and responsibilities, as if I'd been living in a tree for the last decade, as if I didn't work double shifts, save aggressively, and sacrifice vacations just to buy the home they wiped off my name without even blinking. And the funniest, or maybe saddest, part, my brother didn't even want the place. That's what really twisted the knife. He shrugged when they told him, "Thanks, I guess," like someone handed him a sweater one size too small. No gratitude, no recognition of the violation, just casual entitlement, soaked in laziness. Meanwhile, I was supposed to smile, clap, say congratulations, accept the fact that my parents had chosen their golden child yet again. It wasn't the first time they tried to shrink me, but it was the first time they succeeded at scaling me down to a version of myself they could control. But here's the thing my parents never understood. You can push the quiet child only so many times before quiet becomes sharp, before polite becomes strategic, before the girl who never raised her voice learns how to raise hell with silence. Ever experience that moment where your anger becomes so precise it feels like a scalpel instead of a hammer? That's the moment I reached. Mom kept talking. She always does. Something about family duty and tradition and how I should understand. Dad chimed in with the classic, "We just want what's best for everyone," which in their language means what's best for your brother. But I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I didn't even blink. I just looked around the house, my house, and realized they hadn't stolen a home. They'd stolen a line they thought would keep me tied to them. They believed the house was leverage, something they could dangle, something that would keep me loyal, compliant, predictable. They thought wrong. Because here's a secret they never saw coming. I knew something they didn't. Something powerful. Something game-changing. And the only reason I hadn't used it was because I wanted to keep the peace. But peace is the first casualty of betrayal. I remember Dad saying, "We hope you can be mature about this." Mature, as if maturity looks like swallowing injustice and calling it dinner, as if maturity means letting others decide what you deserve. Real maturity is walking away from people who insist on shrinking you to fit the size of their expectations. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't plead, I didn't negotiate, I didn't ask why, because I already knew the answer. They loved him more. Not in the sweet, sentimental way, in the transactional way. He was the investment they kept pouring into, hoping one day he'd become impressive enough to make the family look good. I was the insurance policy, the backup, the dependable one who never caused trouble, the one they assumed would always forgive because I always had. until I stopped. I set my keys on the counter, the same keys they'd assumed I'd fight to keep, and said, "Okay." Just that. Okay. My brother looked confused. Mom blinked like she misheard me. Dad frowned, waiting for the meltdown, but I didn't melt. I froze. Clean, silent, untouchable. Then I walked out the door, leaving them in my kitchen, in my house, waiting for the girl they'd known to return. She didn't. But here's the part that will matter later. The part that sets every future domino falling. I didn't walk out empty-handed. They took something visible, a house. But I took something far more powerful, what they needed most, what they depended on without even knowing it, what held their entire illusion together. And the irony, they handed it to me themselves years ago, thinking it would never matter. But it did. It mattered more than they could possibly understand. Have you ever stood at the beginning of a revenge arc so poetic the universe practically hands you a theme song? That's where I was, stepping into the cold air with a plan already forming. A plan they would never see coming. A plan that would make the house they stole look like a cheap toy in comparison. So here's the real question. If your family took the thing you built from nothing, would you walk away quietly, or would you take back something they can't replace? And if you knew you held the one thing they needed to keep their world from collapsing, would you hand it over, or would you let gravity do its job? Because I knew exactly what I was about to do, and trust me, it wasn't forgiveness. You know that weird numbness that hits you after a massive betrayal, right after the shock, but before the full rage kicks in? That's where I was as I walked down the driveway, leaving my house, no, their house now, apparently. The sky looked completely ordinary, which almost offended me. There should have been thunder, a power outage, a flock of crows forming the word seriously? Something, but no, just a painfully normal afternoon wrapped around a moment that split my life into before and after. And here's the part they never factored in. Before, I tolerated things. After, I started calculating. I didn't go to a friend's place to cry. I didn't go drink my feelings into oblivion. I went straight to my car, sat in the driver's seat, and opened the notes app on my phone. Then I started listing, one by one, every single thing my parents had ever put in my name, because it was simpler that way, or because I was more responsible, or because your brother will mess it up. See, that's the thing about being the reliable child. Your family quietly trusts you with way more than they admit. Somewhere between being the errand runner and unpaid therapist, I became the unofficial admin of their entire lives. Utilities under my email. Some of the insurance policies in my name. The main family account for online banking access. Guess whose number is the recovery contact? But none of that was the big thing. The thing they needed most was older, deeper, buried in paperwork they never bothered reading because my grandfather took care of it before he died. I remembered the day it happened, clear as day. We were sitting in his living room. I was 19, exhausted from work, smelling faintly of coffee and printer ink. He had handed me a folder and said, "You're the only one I trust with this. My parents thought it was sentimental junk." My brother didn't care as long as it wasn't cash. But when I opened it weeks later, I realized what it was, co-ownership. Not of the house they just gave away, of the land underneath it. And not just that one. Of the land under their own home too, and the little rental property they bragged about owning as passive income. Granddad wasn't stupid. He saw how they favored my brother. He heard the comments, the subtle dismissals, the way my contributions were treated like obligations, while my brother's bare minimum was celebrated like a Nobel Prize. So he did something quiet, clever, and explosive. He placed a percentage of the land titles and key rights in my name as joint owner. Not because I asked, but because he wanted a balance of power. Land is leverage, he'd said. Whoever holds it holds the future. At the time, I just smiled, hugged him, and nodded like I fully understood. truth? I didn't. Not then. But sitting in my car after my parents handed my house to my brother, I understood it perfectly. They could change names on the mortgage. They could transfer the house. They could manipulate a deed on the structure itself. But the land, the base, the foundation, they couldn't touch it without my signature, without my consent, without me. And they had just shown me exactly how much my place in the family meant to them. Tell me, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Walked back inside and asked for a respectful conversation? Sent a long emotional text about how hurt you feel? Prayed they'd realize they were wrong and apologize someday? That version of me existed once. She died the moment they smiled while taking my house. I called my grandfather's lawyer, not my parents' lawyer. Not the one who always took Dad's side at every family adjustment. Granddad's. The one whose number was written in his shaky handwriting on the folder he'd given me. "It's time," I said when he picked up. He didn't even ask who it was. "I wondered when you'd call," he replied. "You knew this would happen?" I asked. "I knew how your parents think," he said. "And I knew it wouldn't be you who caused the damage." A wave of something like validation, anger, and grief washed through me all at once. "They gave my house to my brother," I said, the words tasting metallic. "Of course they did," he sighed. "And now you're ready to use what he left you." "I want to sell," I said, "not the structure. They've moved that mess around already. I want to sell the one thing they actually need." There was a pause. Not hesitation, calculation. "The land?" he said. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "All of it." "You know," he replied, "once this moves, there's no going back. You'll be triggering something permanent." "They already did that," I said. "I'm just putting it in writing." He was quiet for a moment. "You're your grandfather's granddaughter," he said finally. "All right, come by my office tomorrow. We'll start the process." And that's when the outline of my revenge fully clicked into place. They thought they took something irreplaceable from me. But what they didn't realize was that they had built their entire sense of security, financial, emotional, social, on ground that wasn't entirely theirs. Family gatherings in that house, memories, status, the "we own property" line they loved using as if it made them morally superior. All of it sat on top of land I partially controlled. Land they thought was a footnote. Land they assumed would never move. Land they believed I'd never touch because I was too nice and didn't care about money. Here's what they never understood. It was never about the money. It was about power, about respect, about not being treated like a footnote in my own life story. That night, I didn't sleep much. Not because I was uncertain, but because my brain was replaying everything. Every little slight that seemed small at the time. Every joke at my expense. Every "you're strong, you'll be fine," used as an excuse to give my brother the easier path. And the more I replayed, the more one thought solidified in my mind. They had taught me unintentionally how to detach, how to stop expecting, how to pull back. They just never imagined I'd use those skills on them. By morning, I wasn't sad. I wasn't conflicted. I was calm, focused, ready. I put on simple clothes, tied my hair back, and looked in the mirror for longer than usual. Not to check if I looked pretty, to make sure I looked like someone who wouldn't fold, someone who wouldn't let guilt drag her back into a burning house. "If you back out now," I told my reflection, "you're telling them they can do anything and you'll still show up when they call." I held my own gaze. I didn't flinch. That's how I knew the girl they betrayed was gone. And the woman walking into that lawyer's office, she knew exactly what she was about to do to her family's safety net, and she was ready to live with it. Now here's the part that will make some people uncomfortable. This wasn't just about me losing a house. It was about them learning what it feels like when the thing you take for granted gets taken from you. They were so sure I'd never use my leverage, they practically handed me the moral permission to finally pull the trigger. And it all started with one document my grandfather signed years ago, before any of us knew how messy things would really get. They thought they were untouchable, that everything under their feet was guaranteed. They forgot who shared the ground beneath them. And I was on my way to prove it. Walking into the lawyer's office the next morning felt like stepping into a parallel universe, the kind where I wasn't the reliable daughter or the emotional mop of the family, but someone with actual power, someone holding cards nobody even knew were still in the deck. The receptionist looked up and gave me that corporate smile that always feels a little too tight, but I barely noticed. My mind was busy replaying every memory tied to that house, every Saturday I spent sanding floors while Dad watched TV, every late-night phone call when Mom needed help organizing her bills, every family moment built on a foundation they assumed was fully theirs. I sat across from the lawyer, Granddad's lawyer, and for the first time since everything happened, I felt grounded. He slid the folder across the desk. The same folder Grandpa had given me years ago. The same scratchy handwriting on the label, land rights do not lose. If only he knew what a grenade he'd put in my hands. Here's the situation, the lawyer said, flipping pages like he already knew where to find the pressure points. Because you're a co-owner, any sale, lease, renovation, or transfer of the land requires your approval. Without it, they have the structure but not legal authority to keep it there. That sentence dropped into my chest like a stone sinking into deep water. So technically, he continued, your parents and brother are living on property that cannot be transferred, rented, or used without you. And the house they gave away? It's sitting on land they do not have full control over. I exhaled slowly, not because I was nervous, because I finally understood just how far their arrogance had blinded them. They thought they could gift what wasn't theirs. They thought paperwork was a formality. They thought I was a formality. If you decide to sell your portion, he said, it forces a partition, meaning whoever buys your share could compel a full sale of the property, including their home, including their rental, meaning they lose everything, I said, finishing the sentence. He nodded. Yes, unless they buy you out. At market rate or higher, depending on the buyer interest. And that's when the emotional part of me, the tiny sliver still clinging to the idea of family, asked a question I wasn't proud of. Is this too extreme? The lawyer didn't laugh at me. He didn't judge me. He just said, ask yourself something. If they had the leverage you have right now, would they hesitate? I didn't even need a full second to answer that. No, I said. They'd use it. They already did. That was the difference between us. I used to love them enough to give them grace. They loved me just enough to take advantage of it. Then the question is, he said, leaning back, are you ready for the consequences of acting in your own favor for once? Am I ready? I was born ready. I just didn't know it until now. The lawyer drew up the initial paperwork to list my land rights for sale, a move that would immediately create chaos once word got out, and it would get out. You can't list partial land under a family home without sending a shockwave straight through every neighbor, investor, and property vulture in the area. The moment I signed the preliminary intent, I felt something uncoil inside me. Something I'd been carrying for years without realizing how heavy it was. Guilt, fear, obligation, all the emotional chains they looped around me with phrases like, family first. Don't make trouble, be understanding, you're the strong one. I wasn't the strong one. I was the convenient one. And once convenient turned into disposable, well, that's when they messed up. Walking back to my car, the air felt different, not lighter, sharper. Like the world around me had shifted half an inch to the right. I drove straight to the neighborhood and parked a few houses down from my parents' place, not because I wanted to go in, but because I wanted to see what it felt like to look at it from the outside. Their house looked smaller than I remembered, older, almost fragile. Funny how something can look sturdy until you know what supports it. My brother's car was in the driveway, the one Dad bragged about helping him buy because family supports family. I sat there and asked myself the question the lawyer didn't ask but should have. What if they beg? What if they apologized? What if they finally say all the things I wanted to hear growing up? And before I could even finish the fantasy, my stomach tightened with the answer. They wouldn't. They never had. They would explain, rationalize, minimize, gaslight, guilt trip, blame shift, and then try to patch it all with a half-hearted, but we still love you. That kind of love isn't real. That's a coupon, only valid when convenient and non-refundable. The next move was simple: notify them. I wasn't going to be dramatic about it, no screaming, no grand confrontation, just a message that would strike cleaner than a slap. Per legal requirement, you are notified that the land titles under your properties are in pending sale review. Any questions may be directed to my attorney. I hit send and waited. The typing bubble popped up immediately. My mother, of course. She sent a wall of text. I didn't bother reading. Then Dad called 3 times. Then my brother texted, "WTF are you doing?" as if he had ever cared about anything I did until now. But the real message that solidified everything came last. You are overreacting. Stop being emotional. Come home and we'll discuss this like adults. The same phrase manipulators use when they realize their target finally woke up. I locked my phone, let the silence sit, let them stew. Let them feel just an ounce of the powerlessness they gifted me yesterday. Now here's the thing, this isn't just revenge, it's reclamation. And the next step? That's where everything turns from personal to poetic. Because the land I was selling wasn't just under their houses. It was under something else they depended on, something they believed was untouchable, something they never imagined I'd dare to move. And when they find out, every boundary they crossed is going to collapse right under their feet, literally. Ready for the part where the real earthquake begins? The earthquake began the moment I realized my parents weren't panicking because they understood the gravity of what I was doing. They were panicking because for the first time in their lives, they no longer controlled the narrative, and that terrified them. You can always tell when a controlling family loses its grip. Their voices get louder, but their arguments get smaller. That's exactly what happened the moment Dad stormed into my apartment building lobby as if he owned the place and shouted my name like I was a misbehaving child at a grocery store. I didn't buzz him in. I watched him from the hallway camera on my phone, arms crossed, expression calm enough to scare him if he could see it. He paced, jaw tight, pulling out his phone every few seconds to call me again. Each call went to voicemail. Each voicemail got angrier. "This is ridiculous," he snapped into the speaker. "You're making a scene." Funny how people who cause the mess always accuse the quiet person of making a scene when we finally stop accepting crumbs. I waited until he left and only then drove home, not to react but to prepare. Because the thing I had to do next required clarity, not emotion. The next morning, I signed the first official document with the lawyer, the public notice of intent to partition and sell. Once that paper hit the system, everything moved from threat to process. You'd think I'd feel guilty signing something that could uproot my family's entire life, but guilt only works when you've been treated fairly. Betrayal burns guilt clean out of you. The lawyer looked at me and said, "This will send shockwaves." I nodded. Good. Shockwaves were overdue. When I stepped outside, the lawyer's secretary stopped me. "Are you sure you're ready for what comes next?" she whispered, and I surprised myself by smiling. "I've been ready for years." She gave me a look, half pity, half respect, a look women give each other when they recognize someone who finally chose herself. From there, chaos ignited like a fuse. By noon, my phone was exploding with messages, not just from my parents, but from relatives I barely spoke to. Isn't it funny how your existence is irrelevant until your choices affect their comfort? Aunt Laura texted, "Sweetheart, Don't do anything rash, even though she once forgot my birthday 3 years in a row. Uncle Tom said, let's talk like family, even though he talked down to me my entire childhood. And my mother? She sent the masterpiece of all manipulative texts. After everything we've done for you. Everything. As if love is a loan I defaulted on. As if boundaries are ingratitude. As if betrayal is a misunderstanding. I muted every group chat, every text chain, every phone call dripping with fake concern and genuine panic. Let them sweat. They'd never sweated for me. Here's the thing about revenge. When it's rooted in justice, it doesn't feel dirty. It feels clarifying, like wiping fog off a mirror and finally seeing yourself clearly. And what I saw wasn't the forgotten daughter or the backup plan. It was someone capable of ending generational patterns with a single signature. That afternoon, the lawyer called me about something new, something I didn't expect. We received an inquiry, he said carefully, from a private buyer. Already? I blinked. Word travels fast. He paused. It's for the land under the rental property. Who? I asked. He hesitated. A development firm. My heart dropped, not with fear, but with the weight of knowing exactly what that meant. If the firm bought my share, they could legally force the sale of the entire rental property. My parents' precious passive income, their pride, their security, their retirement cushion, and with my signature, it would vanish. Do you want to consider the offer? The lawyer asked. And for a second, I thought about what that property represented, not just financially, emotionally. It was the symbol they used to shame me. Your brother's doing well. Look at his responsibilities. Look at his family. Look at our investment. What do you have? They weaponized that property like a trophy, a badge of you're falling behind. And the poetic justice of being the one person who could take it away, it was intoxicating. But power without patience is messy. I wasn't here to be messy. I was here to be precise. So I did something that surprised even the lawyer. Hold the offer, I said. Don't reject it. Don't accept it. Let it sit. You want to wait? No, I corrected. I want them to wait. Because nothing breaks a manipulator faster than uncertainty. People like my parents rely on stability to maintain control. When the ground under them shakes, they show their real selves. And I needed to see theirs clearly before I decided how hard to strike. That night, as I lay on my couch, staring at the ceiling, my phone buzzed again, not with anger this time, but desperation. The message simply said, "We need to talk," followed by, "Please." I almost felt bad. Almost, but then I remembered standing in my stolen kitchen, hearing my mother say, "We're giving it to your brother because his family needs it more." As if I wasn't family. As if I didn't need protection, stability, love. As if I was a guest in my own life. So no, I didn't feel bad. I felt justified. The next morning, something happened that shifted everything again. My brother called. Not to yell, not to threaten, not to brag. But to ask something I never expected. Can we meet? And that's when I realized this story wasn't just about my parents anymore. Someone else had something to hide. Something tied to the land. Something tied to the house. Something tied to me. And whatever it was, he needed to tell me first, before Mom and Dad got to me. Why? That was the new question. And you already know, when a golden child starts cracking, it means the truth underneath is uglier than anyone imagined. Ready for the confession that blows this whole story off its hinges? When my brother asked to meet, I expected a half apology, a weak attempt at smoothing things over, or maybe even a manipulation tactic disguised as concern. What I did not expect was the look on his face when he walked into the cafe. A look I'd never seen on him before. Not pride. Not entitlement, not smug superiority. Fear, real, unmistakable fear. He sat down across from me, eyes darting like he was checking for witnesses. "I need to tell you something," he whispered. And just like that, my heartbeat slowed. Not because I was scared, because I was curious. You know that odd thrill when the person who always gets away with everything finally cracks? That slow burn satisfaction of watching the facade peel? That was the flavor of the moment. "It's about the house," he said. "Not my house. Their house. Our parents' home. What about it?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "They can't afford it." That made me blink, not because it shocked me, they'd been living above their means for years, but because of what he said next. "They mortgaged it," he said. Twice. A cold electric stillness washed over me. "What do you mean twice?" "They took one mortgage 5 years ago," he said. "Then another last year. They used the equity to help me." He didn't have to explain. I remembered all the lucky breaks he got. The car, the business investment, his wedding, his down payment, the mystery money that seemed to appear out of nowhere. My parents hadn't been generous, they'd been reckless. "But that's not the worst part," he whispered, finger shaking. "They put the rental property up as collateral." That stopped my breathing. Because the land under the rental, partially owned by me, they had used my asset without my permission to secure their debt. That wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. "They didn't know," he added quickly, seeing the look on my face. "They thought they owned all of it. They forgot about Grandpa's transfer." "No, they didn't forget. They ignored it. They assumed it didn't matter because they assumed I didn't matter." "And now?" I asked. His voice cracked. "If you sell your share of the land, the bank will call the loan. They'll lose the house, they'll lose the rental, they'll lose everything." He looked at me with that same boyish expression he used growing up, the one he pulled out whenever he needed rescuing. "Please," he said, "don't do this." And for a split second, a tiny part of me, the child who once adored him, felt a flicker of hesitation. But then the rest of me, the woman they betrayed, dismissed, and sacrificed, answered instead. "Do what?" I asked calmly. "Make a legally sound decision involving my inheritance?" He flinched like I slapped him. "You don't understand," he said. "Dad, he's sick." My stomach tightened. "What kind of sick?" "He won't tell anyone," he said. "Mom's been hiding the bills." "They're drowning. If you sell, you'll—" "Finish this sentence," I said. His voice dropped to a whisper. "You'll destroy them." I leaned back, studying him, my golden child brother, shaking like the pedestal finally cracked under his feet. "You want to know what destroys people?" I said softly. "Betraying your daughter, stealing her house, giving everything she earned to someone else, using land you didn't bother understanding as leverage for loans you couldn't afford, acting like consequences are optional because you assume she'll save you." He looked down. "I didn't know they'd do that to you." "Yes," I said. "You did. You just didn't care." He winced. "Good. So why tell me all this now?" I asked. He let out a breath that sounded like it was ripping out of him. "Because there's something else," he said. "Something Mom doesn't know, something Dad hid from everyone." My pulse picked up. "What?" He glanced around, then leaned in. "Your name. It's not just on the land titles Grandpa gave you." My heart dropped into my stomach. "What are you talking about?" He hesitated, then said the one sentence that turned the entire story inside out. "Dad put another property in your name 10 years ago. But he never told you." For a moment, everything in the cafe went silent, even the clinking of spoons, even the humming of the overhead lights. "Why?" My voice barely came out. "Because," he whispered, "it wasn't supposed to be yours." My blood went cold. Whose was it supposed to be? He hesitated so long, I thought he wouldn't answer. And then, mine. The ground under me didn't shake. It collapsed entirely. "They planned," he continued, "to transfer it to me when I got married, but the paperwork got complicated. And Dad didn't want Mom to know they used you as a placeholder, so he hid it." My jaw clenched. My vision narrowed, my mind raced like a storm breaking loose. Not only had they stolen from me, Not only had they betrayed me, they had also used my identity, my legal standing, to hide assets, secure loans, and shuffle property behind my back. So let me get this straight, I said slowly. My parents stole my house, used my land as collateral, mortgaged their home twice for you, and hid a property in my name that was meant for you? He nodded miserably. You weren't supposed to find out. I laughed. Actually laughed. A sharp, humorless sound that made him pale. You know what the funniest part is? I said. They thought hiding things from me was safe. They thought keeping me out meant keeping me harmless. His eyes widened slightly. What are you going to do? What I should have done years ago, I said. Take back everything they hid. His face drained of color. Please, don't. I cut him off. This isn't about revenge, I said. This is about truth. And truth doesn't destroy people. Lies do. And with that, I stood up, grabbed my bag, and walked away, leaving him at the table with the weight of every secret he'd finally admitted. But as I stepped outside, one final thought struck me like lightning. If Dad hid one property in my name, what else had he hidden? And more importantly, why? Because I had a feeling the ugliest truth wasn't the betrayal, it was the reason behind it. Ready for the part where everything they tried to bury claws its way back to the surface? I didn't go home after meeting my brother. I drove straight to the one place that held every answer they thought I'd never dare to look for, the county records office. If my father had hidden one property in my name, there was no universe in which that was the only secret buried under my signature. My hands were steady when I filled out the search forms, steady when I handed them over, steady even when the clerk raised an eyebrow at the number of documents tied to my identity. It wasn't until the printer began spitting out page after page, thick stacks of legal paper with my name stamped across the top, that my pulse finally thundered in my ears. The clerk slid everything toward me and said, "You might want a minute." She had no idea how right she was. I sat down in one of those awful plastic chairs, inhaled slowly, and started reading. Property 1, the hidden house my brother confessed about. Property 2, land my father inherited from his parents' land I never even knew existed. Property 3, an old commercial lot registered 15 years ago, in my name, my signature, my identity, used like a pocket they reached into whenever it benefited them. And at the bottom of the stack, the oldest document of them all. A transfer filed when I was 13, a small note attached by an administrator, original signer deceased, documents preserved as ordered. My grandfather. The date matched the month before he died. With shaky breath, I unfolded the last page. It wasn't a legal form. It was a letter. A handwritten letter with my name on top. If you are reading this, it means the family has once again chosen what is easy over what is right. My throat closed. You were not given the first house, the first opportunity, or the first praise, but I give you the foundation instead. You may not understand the weight of this now, but one day you will. You will be the one who sees clearly. You will be the one who stands when others fall. And when they finally reveal who they truly are, remember, land becomes legacy, a house becomes noise. Do not let them convince you your place is smaller than theirs. I stared at those words until the ink blurred through tears I didn't even feel fall. All these years, all the moments I thought I was overreacting, all the times I downplayed my own pain. My grandfather didn't just see what was coming. He protected me from what was coming. Suddenly every strange decision he'd made sense. The land, the signatures, the co-ownership. The folder he put in my hands at 19 with that serious look in his eyes. He didn't give me property, he gave me a shield. And my parents, too arrogant to notice, had been hacking away at the metal with bare hands. When I walked out of the records office, I wasn't the same person who walked in. Something old and heavy and wounded had burned off, leaving something cleaner, louder, sharper. It was time to end this the right way. Not with screaming, not with revenge plays, not with chaos for the sake of chaos. No, the worst thing you can do to people who survive on control is show them the consequences of their own decisions, delivered calmly. So I drove to my parents' house, pulled into the driveway, knocked once. Mom opened the door and gasped, like she'd seen a ghost. Maybe she had, because the daughter standing in front of her wasn't the one she thought she could manipulate anymore. She stepped aside without a word. Dad was on the couch, looking older than I remembered, more tired, but not sorry, not remorseful, just inconvenienced. "We need to talk," he said, trying to sound authoritative. I sat down across from them and placed the thick stack of documents on the coffee table. "This," I began softly, "is everything you hid from me." Dad stiffened. Mom's face drained of color. "I didn't hide." "You did," I cut in, calm, controlled, unshakably firm. "You hid property in my name. You used my identity as collateral. You mortgaged your house for my brother. You gave away mine." Dad opened his mouth, but I kept going. "And you never once thought I'd find out because you never once believed I mattered enough to check." Mom whispered, "We were trying to help your brother. He needed—" I slammed my palm on the table, not loudly, but hard enough to shock her into silence. "You stole from me," I said, "and you lied." Dad leaned forward. "You're being dramatic." "No," I said, sliding the final letter toward him. "Grandpa was dramatic. I'm just following instructions." He read the first line and the color drained from his face. Mom grabbed it next, hand trembling. "I'm selling my share of every property," I said. "All of it." Mom's voice cracked. "We'll lose the rental, yes. We'll lose the house, yes. We'll have nothing left." "Yes," I said. "Just like I had nothing when you stole my home." Dad tried one last time. "We're family." I stood. Family protects, family respects. Family doesn't sacrifice one child to fund another. Mom whispered, "Please, you're our daughter." I shook my head. "You love the version of me that stayed quiet. She doesn't exist anymore." I walked to the door. Dad suddenly shouted, "If you do this, we will never forgive you." I turned back with a calmness that wasn't anger, it was freedom. "I'm not asking you to." And then, just before I stepped outside, I set the final truth on the table like a match near gasoline. "The property you hid in my name, I'm keeping it. It's legally mine. All of it." Their faces collapsed. The door clicked shut. As I walked down the steps, I felt something settle inside me. Not bitterness, not victory, but clarity. They didn't raise a daughter. They raised a warning. And now they finally understood what happens when you ignore the child, who learned to build her own foundation while they were busy tearing theirs apart. The strange thing about finally taking control of your life after years of being dismissed is that victory doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like an eerie quiet, the kind that comes right after a storm destroys a coastline. Part of you is relieved, part of you is terrified, and part of you, if you're being honest, feels a crack of grief for the version of yourself who kept waiting for people to behave better. That's where I was the morning after I served the official sale notice to my parents' property attorney. The paperwork had been filed, the process was moving, and there was no undoing it. Yet instead of celebrating, I found myself staring at my coffee like I was waiting for some magical clarity to float to the surface. It didn't. What did float, however, was my phone lighting up with a storm of messages. But these weren't from family. No, these were from neighbors, community members, old teachers, people I barely remembered. Word had spread not just about the sale, but about the reason behind it. It's funny how a family's dirty secrets, once cracked open, spill out with the force of a busted fire hydrant. By noon, 3 people had sent screenshots of community groups buzzing about my parents' behavior. Can you believe they did that to their own daughter? I always knew something was off about how they treated her. It's always the golden child families. Imagine stealing your kid's house and thinking it's okay. At first, I didn't know how to feel. Vindicated, embarrassed, exposed. But the truth was simpler. This wasn't about public sympathy. This was about truth finally having a stage after years of being shoved into the attic. Around 1 p.m., as I debated whether to turn off my phone or throw it into the ocean, the doorbell rang. I checked the camera. It wasn't my parents. It wasn't my brother. It was my aunt, one of the ones who always treated me like I was the spare tire in the family trunk. She was standing outside with a casserole dish like we had suddenly become characters in some moral of the story sitcom. I didn't open the door. I spoke through the intercom. "What do you want?" I asked flatly. "Sweetheart," she said, voice trembling with manufactured warmth. "This has all gotten so out of hand." "You mean the truth?" "Your parents are devastated. Devastated by the consequences of their own choices," I corrected, "not by their behavior." She shifted uncomfortably. "They're scared. They're going to lose everything." "And when I lost everything," I asked, "did they show up with a casserole?" Silence. A long, ugly silence. When she finally spoke, it was with the tone people use when they realize manipulation won't work. "You're making a mistake." I almost laughed. "I'm making a decision." She tried once more. "Family is all we have." "Exactly," I said. "Which is why I won't pretend mine didn't betray me." I ended the intercom connection before she could respond. That was the moment I realized something crucial. People who never protected you will always defend the people who hurt you. It's easier. It's familiar. It keeps their worldview intact. But I didn't owe them that comfort. That evening, the lawyer called with an update. "We received a counteroffer from your parents' attorney," he said. "They want to negotiate." "Negotiate what?" "They want time to refinance. They're offering to buy you out." I let the silence stretch until it shook the line. "They can't afford it," I said. "They're drowning. They said they'll find a way." "They said that about my house too," I replied, and look where that ended. The lawyer paused, then asked the question that cut right through the center of everything. "What outcome do you want?" I leaned back, closed my eyes, and finally allowed myself to speak the truth I had been ignoring. "I want the cycle to end," I whispered. "I want the part of me that kept waiting for them to choose me to stop existing." He didn't respond immediately. When he did, it was with the gentlest tone he'd ever used. "Then let the process play out. Don't interfere. Don't soften. Let the system do what they forced it to do." And that was the moment, right there, that transformed my revenge into something else. This wasn't punishment. This was closure. The next morning, I got another message from my brother. Not angry, not panicked, just honest. "They're falling apart," he wrote. "Mom hasn't stopped crying. Dad's not sleeping. I don't know what to do." I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed back, "Tell the truth. That's all you can do." His reply came instantly. "Will you talk to them?" And just like that, the ache in my chest returned, because the truth was complicated. Did I want to face them? Yes. Did I want them to face me? Absolutely. But did I want to be the one to save them from a disaster they created? No. They had used me as a shield for decades. I wasn't stepping back into that role. "Not yet," I replied. He tried again. "They never thought you'd go this far. They never thought I'd wake up," I wrote, and that was the difference. Sometime around sunset, I drove to the beach, my safe place, the one place where silence didn't feel like punishment. I walked barefoot across the cold sand and sat near the shoreline. For the first time since the whole nightmare began, the weight of everything hit me, not as rage, not as strategy, but as grief. Grief for the family I never had, grief for the childhood I decorated with excuses, grief for my younger self who thought she was the problem, not the pattern. And then something strange happened. I didn't cry. not one tear. Instead, I felt something settle deep inside me, like sand filling the final gap after a landslide. Like snow gathered to fall in the sumpter that filled the hole, like a hot sand after a liquid's acceptance. Not forgiveness, not surrender, acceptance. I stood up, brushed the sand off my jeans, and whispered into the wind, I don't owe them my ruin. And in that moment, I knew exactly what I needed to do next. Not for them, for me. Because the next step wasn't about destruction. It was about reclaiming something far more powerful than property. Something they never expected me to take. Something they assumed I didn't even want. My voice. My boundaries. My future. And tomorrow morning, they were going to learn exactly what that looks like. Ready for the final blow they never saw coming? I woke up the next morning with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Not the kind that comes from forgiveness or peace, but the kind born from finally understanding your own worth without needing it stamped by the people who raised you. There was no shaking in my hands, no conflict in my chest, no guilt gnawing at the edges of my mind, just focus, purpose. A direction carved so sharply into my instinct that I didn't even need to rehearse what I would say. When I arrived at the lawyer's office for the final signatures, the air felt different, thicker, heavier, like the moment right before thunder cracks across a quiet sky. But before I could walk inside, someone stepped out of a car and blocked my path. My mother. Her hair was messy, her eyes red, her posture fragile in a way I had never seen. She didn't look like a mother trying to protect her child. She looked like a woman terrified of losing control. Please, she whispered, her voice trembling in a way I had waited my entire childhood to hear, not because I wanted her weak, but because I wanted her honest. We need to talk. I stared at her without speaking, letting the silence stretch long enough for her to feel the weight of every moment I had swallowed over the years. She reached for my arm, but I took a step back. No touching, I said calmly. No theatrics. Her throat bobbed. We made mistakes. You made choices, I corrected. Deliberate ones. Tears spilled down her cheeks. We didn't know you'd do this. And there it was, the real truth. Not sorry, not we were wrong. Just, we didn't expect consequences. I finally spoke. Do you want to know what hurts the most? She nodded desperately. It's not the house, I said. It's that I was easier to sacrifice. She collapsed into quiet sobs. But crying doesn't heal what was never acknowledged. Where's Dad? I asked. Her tears stopped just long enough for shame to flicker across her face. He's inside, she whispered. He said he won't beg. I nodded. That sounded like him. A man who would jump through flaming hoops to defend his pride, but wouldn't take a single step to protect his daughter's dignity. I walked past her into the lawyer's building, and there he was, sitting in the waiting area, arms crossed, jaw set, radiating anger that looked a lot like fear wearing a mask. He didn't stand when I approached him. You've done enough damage, he said coldly. Any more, and you won't have a family left. I sat across from him, matching his stare. I didn't do the damage, I said. I'm just removing the carpet you swept it under. His jaw tightened. We were trying to help your brother. At my expense, I said. With my property, my identity, my future. And you justified it because he's your son? His nostrils flared. We couldn't trust you with that house. You're too independent? I asked. Successful without you? Not relying on your approval? Yeah, I know exactly who I am. Difficult, he corrected sharply. You were always difficult. I leaned in, my voice steady. Translation, I wasn't obedient enough to be your puppet. His eyes flashed with something dark. Anger, yes, but also realization. The kind that sucks the air out of a room. You're ruining us, he said quietly. And you don't even care. You ruined me first, I replied. You just didn't expect me to stand up at that Something in his face broke, not fully, not dramatically, but enough to expose the truth beneath all the bluster: regret. The kind that arrives too late to matter. The lawyer opened his office door. "We're ready," he said. My father stood, blocking my path one last time. "If you love us," he said, "you won't sign those papers." I looked him dead in the eyes. "If you loved me," I said, "I would never have had to." He stepped aside, not because he wanted to, but because he knew deep down that this moment wasn't his to control anymore. Inside, the lawyer slid the final document across the table. "Once you sign this," he said, "your share becomes available for forced sale. They won't be able to stop it." My mother hovered in the doorway, shaking. My father stood stiff as stone, eyes burning holes into the floor. My brother wasn't there. He couldn't face what his silence had helped create. I picked up the pen, and for a brief second the entire room held its breath. Not because of the legal power I held, but because their entire legacy, every illusion of control, every sacrifice they expected me to make was balancing on the tip of a pen they never thought I would dare to hold. And then I signed. The sound of the pen scratching across the paper was louder than thunder, louder than screams, louder than every lie they ever told to keep me small. My mother let out a broken sound, half gasp, half cry. My father shook his head slowly, like he was staring at a stranger. But I didn't look at them. I looked at the lawyer. "Send the notice," I said. "Begin the proceedings." When I walked past my parents in the hallway, they didn't speak. They didn't reach for me. They didn't even argue. They just stared at me with a fear I had never seen. Not fear of what I had done, but fear of the realization that I was no longer theirs to manipulate. As I stepped outside, the cold air hit my skin like a blessing. I exhaled, and it felt like the first breath of my entire life. But as I walked toward my car, my phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Only 3 words: he knew everything. I stopped dead in my tracks, because whoever sent it wasn't talking about my brother, or my mother, or even my father. They were talking about someone else, someone hidden in this story from the very beginning. And suddenly, the question wasn't what my parents had done, it was who else had been pulling strings behind the scenes. Ready for the truth that turns this entire nightmare upside down? The message, "he knew everything," clung to my brain like frostbite as I stood frozen beside my car, the lawyer's office behind me, my parents' stunned silence still echoing in the hallway. I read it again, my pulse thundering, because there was only one person that sentence could possibly point to, one person with enough distance to observe everything but enough access to pull strings without ever lifting a finger. My grandfather who died years ago. My grandfather who left me land, rights, protections I didn't understand at the time. My grandfather whose letter I had read in the records office only days ago. My grandfather who predicted betrayal before it even arrived. But the number wasn't his, it wasn't my parents', it wasn't my brother's. Another message arrived before I could breathe. "Check the estate safe deposit box." My stomach dropped, because I knew exactly what that meant. When my grandfather passed, my parents handled the estate poorly, sloppily, selfishly. I had never been given a key to the safe deposit box because, according to them, there was nothing important in there. That was the first lie. Now I understood it was the biggest one. I drove straight to the bank, adrenaline shaking through my body like electricity. The banker looked up when I gave my grandfather's name, then she paused, eyes narrowing with recognition. "We've been waiting for you," she said. "Me?" "Yes," she replied. "Your grandfather instructed that the box could only be opened by you alone and only when a certain condition was met." "What condition?" I asked. She handed me a sealed envelope with my name in my grandfather's handwriting. The note inside was short. "You'll know the day. And if you're reading this, then the day has come." My breath caught in my throat. They led me to the vault, and when the box slid open, I expected documents, maybe another letter, maybe another property deed. But instead, I found something impossible. Evidence, newspaper clippings, legal documents, old financial ledgers, copies of bank transfers, receipts, photos, and a handwritten log in my grandfather's script, titled, "Insurance Against Cowards." The first page made my knees weaken. It was a bank statement showing my parents withdrawing money from a trust fund created for me when I was 6. Money I never knew existed. Money that was supposed to be protected until I was 18. The second page showed the withdrawals increasing as the years passed. Then the dates lined up painfully with the timeline of my brother's health. His tuition, when Dad claimed they couldn't afford mine, his wedding, his business, his bills, his loans, page after page, dollar after dollar, lie after lie. They didn't just steal my house. They stole my childhood savings. They stole the future my grandfather tried to build for me. They used me as a financial ghost to fund my brother's entire adult life, and they hid it for years. My chest tightened with a rage so sharp it felt surgical. But the final page, the last piece in the box, was the one that took the breath and warmth right out of my lungs. A letter addressed to me, dated a month before my grandfather passed. "My girl," it began. "If you are reading this, your parents have finally done what I feared they would. Chosen convenience over you. I have watched for years as you were given less, not because you were unworthy, but because you were strong and they mistook your strength for something they could take advantage of. I placed the land in your name not to burden you, but to protect you. I placed the assets in your name not to confuse you, but to keep them out of hands that would misuse them. You were always meant to inherit more, but I knew they would never give it to you freely. They would give everything to your brother because they always saw you as the one who could survive without help." My vision blurred. But strength should not be an invitation for exploitation, and kindness should not be permission for cruelty. So I left you this box, this evidence, this truth. When they try to take from you, as they eventually will, you will not fight them with emotion. You will fight them with facts, with law, with legacy. My hands trembled as I reached the final lines. You were always the rightful heir, not to their house, but to the truth. And truth, my girl, is the inheritance they never expected you to keep. I couldn't breathe for a moment, not from sadness, but from a clarity so intense it felt like finally stepping into sunlight after years underground. I gathered everything, sealed the box, and walked straight out of the bank, feeling taller than I ever had. My parents thought they had finally cornered me. Instead, they had walked directly into the trap my grandfather set 15 years ago. When I reached home, I spread the documents across my dining table like a courtroom. Every lie, every theft, every betrayal, a timeline of exploitation spanning decades. And for the first time, I realized something that hit me like a bolt of lightning. They hadn't just stolen from me. They had stolen from my grandfather. They had stripped the man who loved me most of his final wishes. They had violated the legacy of the one person who treated me like I mattered. That wasn't just betrayal. That was desecration. And I would not let it stand. Not anymore. I called my lawyer. "I have new evidence," I said. "A lot of it." He asked to see it. When he did, he sat back in stunned silence. "Your grandfather," he whispered, "was preparing for this for years. He knew them," I said, "better than they ever knew themselves." He looked me in the eyes. "With this, you don't just have leverage. You have the power to reclaim everything they took. All of it." "Good," I said, "because I'm done reacting. It's time to finish this." He nodded slowly. "Are you ready for what comes after?" I took a breath that felt like claiming my entire life at once. "I'm ready to take back what was mine before they ever tried to steal it." And as I closed the folder, one truth settled into my bones with a quiet, earth-shattering finality. My parents didn't raise a victim. My grandfather raised a reckoning.